think we're on.
Oh, good. That was like the pre-dinner welcome.
I like it. Nice vibe.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. Chad and I are excited to both be here today to talk a little bit about how Popeyes is transforming their guest experience. We've both kind of grown up professionally in the restaurant business the last 20 years or so it's something that we're both really passionate about. We've been lucky enough to work together over about the last 4 years at Popeyes, myself as the agency partner and Chad in a traditional marketing role. So you can imagine about 6 months ago, I was a little disappointed when Chad got tapped to take on the VP of Guest Experience because I felt that we wouldn't be able to work together and collaborate with our teams the way we had been so successful over the last few years. But what's been really exciting to learn and understand as he's geared up on this new role is how interconnected what we're doing in putting ads out there is to the guest experience in the store. The physical meets digital, as someone said earlier today. So luckily enough, we've been able to be working together just about as much as before and would love to take the opportunity to talk to him a little bit about what he's doing, how he thinks he's going to get it all done, and poke and prod a little bit about the process that he's going through to really transform that experience. So let's kick it off. Let's start a little bit about the challenges you have before you. What are the things that you saw coming into this role that really said to you, man, this is stuff I've got to deal with now?
Aside from my own mentality as a brand marketer, walking into a function that was typically kind of, as I always thought, training and marketing, and our role was to invite people through the doors, and kind of where they went from there wasn't really our issue, right? We pumped traffic and wanted to get that through, but as I settled into the role and really looked at the scope of it, there were 3 kind of key areas for me that presented the biggest opportunities or challenges. The first of which is that at Popeyes, we are about 99% franchised. So if you think about our global scope, and we'll talk about that in a minute, we have all of these amazing team members on the front lines every day dealing with our guests that are coming through those doors. We're asking them to do a lot of things, and they're not our employees. So if you think about the chain of influence and what that means and how imperative that is to a business, and that comes from us at the brand, that comes through the belief of the franchisees, to their management, to the teams, to their restaurant managers, and ultimately those folks that are smiling and serving our customers on the front line every day. Second, in our business, and this spans certainly the food industry and trickles into retail, but at that team member level, we're dealing with turnover at 100 to 200% annually. So if you think about folks coming through the doors in your restaurants and you're training them, it's beyond just handing them a book. Hey, this is how to smile at a guest. Hey, make sure the food's hot and fresh. Sure, those are all important things. But if you don't have an established culture and vibe and sort of resonance that they can feel walking in the door, you need them to have that. You need the teams to lead that, and that focuses across that chain of influence. And the other thing is just simply scope. We have over 2,500 restaurants around the globe, 1,900 plus here in the U.S. So not only do we have that huge franchise system, not only do we have a gigantic span of restaurants, but we also have to think about what that brand means and how it comes to life in those countries. So we are Popeyes Louisiana Kitchen. Our brand is our brand. It doesn't matter if we're in the U.S. or we're somewhere in the globe. But the subtleties of that interpretation as it relates to the experience and what it means to those guests coming through the doors is where we have those subtleties and nuances.
And I know one of the biggest challenges that we talk about is as new stores open, how do you bring that along to that new store that just got there? How do you make sure that that culture is ingrained in a new country, a new market, a new state? Something that's been really interesting to us as we tied the marketing pieces together with that. But well, where do you start when you go into this? You're looking at those kind of 3 major challenges that you have in front of you. I know where I might start, but usually I get an assignment from a client or I'm in on meetings and there's a key objective, but I know in part this was an open book for you. So how did you find your way at first?
Yeah, absolutely. Watch the stage there, by the way. You're close to
okay.
I'm good. So we start, this might sound so basic, but we started with the guest. We started with the guest. You know, we as marketers, and I think we inherently as people, we like to kind of tell people what they think they're going to enjoy, and we don't necessarily ask them what they might enjoy. So you ever go to a restaurant, it could be your favorite restaurant, and you order a burger there every week, and you know, a couple of times you go in, maybe it's once every 2 weeks, maybe you figure it out it's on Thursday night and it has like extra ketchup on it, like there's a lot of ketchup on it the one time. That's probably because the person making it really loves ketchup and they want you to love it too. So we have to think about what is meaningful to our guest, what that means. And I'll tell you, that can come in a lot of different ways. The experience, so long as it's rooted in the brand purpose and so long as it's true and authentic, it can be very simple. So we really started by focusing on the guest. Now, we have a lot of data. We use a whole host of different kind of formats, forms, and fashions. We have our guest surveys. We have our call center. And I'll tell you, if you want to learn about your guests, spend a day on a headset in a call center. You will learn absolutely what they're thinking about every day. So we have that. We have our social listening. We have brand equity. We have our focus groups. We have qual and quant research. So that's a lot of data, and information is power. But as I stepped into the role, I really said, we have to use this for good. This is very powerful, but it has to be used for good. And in this case, that good was the guest. So as you think about the experience for the guest, it can come to life in a lot of different ways. Simple, repeatable. It can be emotional. It can be functional. The way the technology is going, there's been some folks sharing information earlier today. In some instances, it can be human-free. It can be a totally human-free interaction. But the reality is it still has to have your innate core brand purpose involved with it. And you can be simple with that.
Yeah, that's exactly what my question is when you're thinking about the guest and you're thinking about what is executable. I mean, we think about that when we develop promotions together. Yeah. What can the team members handle? What is really going to not only break through for the consumer, but be so seamless in the retail experience that you're going to get the success that you're looking for? So how do you get the brand to fit into this functionality and the guest? What kind of pieces do you start to pull together for that?
Yeah, it's interesting because in keeping it simple, you can obviously inherently kind of lose your way a little bit. But you can keep it simple and still make it feel like you. And that really starts from a place where knowing who you are as a brand. So we spend a lot of money, Carrie and I spent a lot of years spending a lot of money making a lot of promises to consumers that we would drive through the doors of our restaurants, and then basically we wouldn't bring those promises to life. So in bringing those to life, you obviously have to understand and feel what your brand and who your brand is. We at Popeyes, we know we are Popeyes Louisiana Kitchen. That is a great place to play from. We're a whole lot of Louisiana, a little dash of New Orleans in there, and we want that to come to life. So if we give that to our team members and we have them feel that way, and understand the brand and how important it is and the nuances that they're bringing to life to the guests as they come through the door, to give them not only a little taste of Louisiana, literally with the food, and we want that to ignite that passion in our teams because it is truly the core of what we do. But if they bring that to life a little bit each day and they understand what that means, that obviously is a real and great true catalyst ultimately for our growth.
Yeah, I think it's true. You want any customer in your restaurant to be able to sit down and think about what the brand is about, to really understand that experience. And the last thing that you want to see is somebody who doesn't get it, or worse yet, comes across with a kind of a negative.
Yeah, and if you think about it in a really simple fashion, if you had consumers or guests and you're a retailer, or whether it was an online interaction or whether it was in your restaurant or wherever it was, and they were sitting there enjoying a meal or having just purchased a garment or whatever it was, and you're trying to bring that to life, if you handed them a napkin and a pen, would they be able to articulate? If you asked them, hey, what did this feel like today? Would it be anywhere close to what you're conveying externally? Would they kind of parrot and restate the advertising? Or would they be able to tell you how that brand came to life in the experience? Not in a big, grand fashion, but would they be able to get to that level?
I mean, it still feels a little lofty, right? It's a big thing to ask when you were talking about 200% turnover in the industry overall. So I know that you spend a lot of time thinking about how you do get it down to the team member level and how you make the execution happen.
Sure. This is one of my favorite things we talk about, which is developing solutions, not restating problems. So here's like a great example, and I deal with this. I have some kids, 4 of them to be true, and they're fantastic. But if you talk to a kid and they might be sitting there, and one of my kids' friends is over, and they say, "Oh, I'm not doing so well in math." Well, how are you going to get better? Well, I'm going to work harder in math. So is that a solution? No, it's kind of just restating what the problem is. So one of the things that we work on very closely for our teams is really a development of those solutions. So not only an understanding of why it's important, But if you say, oh, you know, the restaurant isn't feeling so friendly, or oh, you want to say thank you more often. If they write down on a piece of paper, I'm going to say thank you more often, you know, great, I hope you do. But what our obligation is for them to really understand, again, in that chain, why it's important. And why it's important to the guest. Because if we help our team members understand and see that, you know what, if you bring this brand to life, if you say thank you, if you repeat that customer's order, if you make their day better, certainly there's a financial linkage. They're going to come see you more often. But you know what? It's going to make your day better. It's going to feel better. You're going to understand what you see in that guest's eyes. We all know what a good experience feels like. You know, you could have a terrible experience, whether it's at the airport or a restaurant or wherever it is, and I guarantee that person that's giving you that bad experience knows what a good experience feels like. So helping them understand without restating problems. And one of the things that we do very succinctly with our partner who works on our survey business is we have a very succinct linkage to those resolutions. So we can identify within each restaurant the issues that are at hand, and then ultimately serve up solutions that the managers can utilize with those teams to convey those messages beyond just asking them to fix the problem.
Yeah, I think it's important to always to try to find those things that will take your stars, your team members that are the stars, and reward them and guide them along the way so that it becomes kind of cultural norm, right, for that to happen. And we've talked about this a lot, the pain point of incentivizing versus measuring. So let's talk a little bit about how you measure for success versus incentivize it.
Yeah, absolutely. So this slide, I think we're going to go to this one. It's a little grandiose. Measure results, don't incentivize them. So this is something that we talk about all the time, and I'll use a couple of examples, and we'll go into kind of the thought process that I have behind this, that I work through with my team and with our team members. So if you're going to measure results, and we all want to do that, we talked a lot about data. There's been great data discussion. We've talked about how we use data. But the data has to be good data. So we can learn and discern a lot from all of that information that we're pulling in, that all of you are pulling in from your guests. But how many of you have gone to a car dealership and you've had your car serviced and you pick up your car and your service manager comes out, or the nice guy at Jiffy Lube, if you have your oil change, said, hey, you might get a follow-up survey. And if you do, can you give me all fives? Because that's the only thing that helps me out. Now, is he focused on making the experience better? Or is he focused on someone at some point saying, hey, you know what? If you have all fives, you get to stick around. Maybe you get a little bonus. Maybe you get a little bump in your salary. So that's what I mean by not incentivizing them. I don't really care if your restaurant or your outlet is scoring at a 20, at a 40, at a 60, out of 100, whatever your scale is. But the reality is that data that's coming in, the team members need to understand how to use it. And by using it, there's financial linkage. You improve the experience, you improve the guest coming through the doors, they're going to come more often, they're going to spend more money, and it's a tool that you can use to get better. The other thing that I think is funny is, oftentimes we hear or see, whether in our industry or other companies that I've worked for in the past, sometimes they spend a lot of time focused on driving those fives, sort of those false pretenses. So now they're spending extra time growing scores that oftentimes, and all of you, a lot of great technology information and sharing here in the room, they're caught doing it. So now they've not only waylaid away from the guest experience, but they've spent time figuring out how to cheat the system, but those results aren't getting through. So really focus on why it's important and help to educate them on that.
It's important. And now, as you kind of think through your transition that you've made over the last 6 months, and you think toward maybe the way you're going to measure yourself
Yes.
at the end of year one, what are the things what does success look like for you? And then we'll open it up to questions. But I want to hear a bit about what you think that measurement is. What are you really striving for?
Certainly, we have metrics in place, measurement, right? But we're going to use it the right way. And we'll see, obviously, as the guests tell us that we're continuing to get better. So from a real top-line standpoint, obviously that's important. The other one that's critically important to me and to us as a brand is the engagement of our franchisees. So we really look and treat our franchisees as our customer. They are our business partners. And so we, over the course of the next year, as my role develops, as we evolve the guest experience, I really very much want and strive for our franchisees to understand, to believe in, and a lot of them are, and doing a phenomenal job. So it's just sort of escalating and building on that guest experience so that they can deliver that down through their teams, really kind of bringing that circle of chain of influence back to, back to life.
Absolutely.
So.
Yeah, thank you so much. So does anybody have any questions?
This thing counted down and started counting up, so it was sort of like a little nervous. I didn't know if it was like...
Hello. I know you mentioned something about social listening. I was wondering, in what capacity are you utilizing the data that you get from that, and what tool are you currently using for that?
Yeah. Do you want to start?
Well, yeah, we actually, as the agency partner for Popeyes, are the social and digital AOR for them, as well as the traditional side. And we do have, we've really ramped up in recent months kind of our observations from the social listening front, as well as really the customer service element of social listening, right? So there's two really distinct roles for us to play, maybe even more, of making sure that the guest positive comments are responded to, as well as helping resolve any issues that might come up. But then doing kind of complete analysis each month. We have what we have monthly promotions, so we use a tool that helps us do postmortems, if you will, each month, looking at activity over time, looking at major topics. Actually, for us, one of the last postmortems, we ended up talking about Ben Carson, and I think in the next postmortem we'll talk about Conan O'Brien, because some of those things that happen to your brand are really those pop culture mentions and things that come up in media that affect you as much as something that you, as an agency, of course, or as a brand, are putting out there.
And then from a guest experience as well, and I appreciate you sharing, we also look to just categorize. So yes, do we respond and do the traditional guest relations, kind of get back to the folks, but we also listen and categorize the issues that are being had. So we certainly want the positives, but if we can understand the 3 or 4 kind of key drivers or causal issues that we're seeing in restaurants repeatedly, we can add that to our thinking moving forward to help address those issues.
We have. I'm sorry.
I thought so.
But thank you. That was great, you guys. Sorry, Aaron.
I'll be around.
He's around. You can catch him at cocktails,
Thank you.
right?
Yes,
okay,
absolutely.
Great. Awesome.
Thank you.